Vision Radio. I'm Lorraine Austin, and today we're talking about one of my favorite subjects in the whole wide world, and that's dogs and their well-being and everything that has to go along with owning your dog and taking care of your dog. And with me is Charlie Moreno. He's from ElPasoPets.org, and also he's a volunteer with the Humane Society and Animal Services of El Paso. Good morning, Charlie. Thanks for being here.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
I'm glad that you are here. I know that on Wednesday we were talking about it on our radio station, The Box, and that you held a class, I guess one of many classes in a series about behavior and communication with your dog.
Right.
Was that what the first one was about?
Yeah, the first one that we publicly promoted was at the library at Richard Burgess in the Northeast. And the idea behind that is to show people what what dogs do as far as body language and signs of anxiety, signs of aggression, the difference between aggression and displays of aggression, which are two different things.
Okay.
That way they can better understand what dogs are communicating. And the idea is to basically prevent dog bites, keep children from being bit. And usually whenever there's a bite, there's always going to be a warning. There's
Okay.
always going to be some type of warning. So we want people to identify some of that stuff, and that way we prevent the bites, and that way whenever there's a bite, obviously the dog goes into the city shelter, and a lot of times those dogs are euthanized. So we're trying to prevent the dogs going into the city shelter.
So
as well.
why do dogs bite? Do you kind of have that? I mean, is there really such a thing as a mean, aggressive dog?
Yeah, but it's very rare. There's dogs that they can be, they just never were socialized with certain people or different types of people. There's a difference between dog aggression and human aggression. I think that's where sometimes people get confused, is that they assume if a dog attacked another dog or a cat or something, that it's automatically going to be aggressive towards humans, and that's just not necessarily true. Now, if the dog is dog aggressive, there's a chance that a person can get hurt, but that's usually because they're trying to break up the fight, and there's what's called redirected aggression, where the dog is trying to get to the other dog or the other animal, but they redirect that aggression towards the handler, so then the person gets hurt. But it's not necessarily that they intentionally try to hurt the person. So as far as necessarily mean dogs, yeah, there are some that just aren't socialized properly, and that's why it's important to socialize your dogs when they're very young, because there is a window when they're puppies. And it's a catch-22, because a lot of times we're told, okay, if you have a puppy, you want to make sure that it's fully vaccinated before you take it anywhere.
Okay.
But then the problem is, if you don't ever take them out, if you never socialize them, then they're going to start seeing some behavior problems because they haven't been exposed to certain people. And I like to tell people, if you're going to socialize your pet, make sure that you know the people that are going to be handling him, make sure that you know the dogs that it's going to be around. But you really do want to make sure that your dog is exposed to different types of people, men, women, people with short hair, long hair, all different sizes, all different heights, people wearing hats, sunglasses, things like that. Because like children and humans, dogs go through a developmental phase also. And they go through a fearing stage from like 6 to 12 weeks. And what happens is they're barely getting their senses of smell, their sense of sight, taste, everything. So to them, everything is really new, but they're getting all these senses at a short amount of time. So if there's a traumatic experience during that time frame, they can get really traumatized for the rest of their life. So, like, let's say, for example, this is a problem that we see a lot, like in Christmas. A lot of people will get their Christmas puppies, right? A lot of people will get their Christmas puppies, and it's cute, they're 8 weeks usually.
Right.
So when they take them home, it's a whole different experience. There's new different scents, there's new different people. There's kids usually approaching the dog face on, eye contact, and that can make a dog start fearing certain shapes, shadows, things like that, sounds.
Even as a puppy?
Especially as a puppy.
Wow.
Yeah, because, again, they're going through a fearing stage, and it's kind of like with kids. At a certain age, they start seeing certain shadows in the room. They think there's something under their bed.
Okay.
And the worst thing that you want to do is yell at a child when they're acting on that. So it's the same thing with puppies. You don't really want to discipline them, yell at them because they get scared of something. They're still figuring everything out. So it's important to socialize them, expose them to different things, but at the same time, because they're not fully vaccinated, you have to be real careful about where you take them. So it's a catch-22, but that's why it's important to kind of know where you're going with them and make sure that you're you're keeping them safe also. Hand sanitizer, things like that.
Okay, so it's so much to absorb. I mean,
a lot.
yeah, it really, really is. I mean, I think a lot of people, don't really think that much into a dog's behavior and why they do what they do, or if someone different comes over to visit and they have such a dog that's so beautiful with them and the family within the household, but then here comes this stranger and maybe a threat, or what the dog thinks is a threat
Right.
to either him or the family,
Right.
correct? So
Yeah.
they're just kind of acting upon their natural instinct and would just act upon that.
Yeah, and like one thing about the Christmas puppies, like the example that we're giving,
Uh-huh.
there's the fearing stage, like 6 to 12 weeks, which pretty much it depends on the breed, but a lot of them are going through that sensitive area where they're still trying to learn everything, and that's why it's important not to traumatize them with something. Well, then in about 9 to 12 months, they go through a re-fearing stage. And there's a lot of animal behaviorists, and we're talking real behaviorists, people that have graduate degrees in applied sciences and stuff like that. And they've determined that this is why a lot of the Christmas puppies end up at the city shelters, because they're 8 weeks when they get adopted, so they're separated from the litter mates, they're separated from the mother. They go through that whole new experience. They're still trying to figure out. A lot of them develop issues, behavioral issues, and the people don't know how to correct it or modify it. And then in about 9 months, well, now it's 4th of July.
Yeah.
Now it's 4th of July season. Now you got fireworks.
Right.
And they're going through that re-fearing stage, and now you have even more trauma. And, that's usually when we see a lot of dogs go missing, because they get so scared of the fireworks, they're jumping out of the gates or, burrowing under the fences. So it's important to keep your dogs inside, but you really have to, think about that, because the dogs do go through those phases just like humans.
I'm not sure if you agree with me, but I would think that you would, that when I say giving a gift of a dog to someone, to anyone, is just a bad idea, period.
Absolutely. It's
right?
completely a bad idea.
Yeah. I mean, even if you watch a show or you see a movie that highlights and showcases a certain breed of dog, whether it be Dalmatians or Great Danes or, whatever the case may be. For one, Dalmatians are highly, highly hyperactive.
Right.
And need an amazing amount of care and a big backyard to run and run and run and run and run and do all the things that a dog needs to do and be played with. And I think that's another thing with just saying socializing with your dog. I think that in itself is so important, because if you get a dog and you just leave it outside, you don't have anything to do with it. You throw them some food once in a while. You have the water there. God willing, that at least that is being done for the animal. Right. But then, your friend's little granddaughter comes over to play, and you go outside with a dog who's never even socialized with adults, much less little kids. It's kind of a freaky thing. And like you said, when that, especially I guess a child on their level and looks right into their eyes, and or it's kind of maybe tugs on their hind leg or their tail, and they're like, freaking out. And then people end up with a situation that's could be quite detrimental, not only for the child but for the dog as well.
Yeah, and let's be honest, kids are scary.
Of course.
I don't have kids, but I see kids all the time.
Absolutely.
And the way they move, they walk awkwardly. They make weird movements. Their arms are flailing. So dogs don't. Sometimes the dogs might not necessarily make the association that they are small humans.
Right.
They might consider them something else. Also, when kids are making noise, they make all sorts of weird noises. They have high pitched voices. They scream. So a lot of those little things, those little nuances that the kids have, people don't think about it, because as parents, we seem to desensitize ourselves. We seem to kind of block it out because we get used to it. But to the dogs, if it's a new dog in the family and they're unfamiliar with the kids, that's a whole different experience. And what we're seeing, again, going back to the Christmas puppy thing, they get them for Christmas, and then the dog is 8 weeks or so, hopefully at least 8 weeks. But let's say it's 8 weeks, and then a month, 2 months later, the cuteness wears off. Now the dog is chewing on your shoes. Now the dog is scratching at the door and scratching the paint off and doing this and that. And then you say, well, he's getting big. Let's leave him outside now. Let's put him outside.
Right, and not have anything to do with him. And just please research an animal that you want to get, a dog that you want to welcome to your home. And if you really are serious in being, not just having the dog there to have him there, but to really be a part of its life. It's not fair. It's a soul nonetheless, and it needs to be nurtured and cared for and loved. And you know what? If it needs to be an outside dog, that's cool. But at least have an allotted, part of the day or time rather to go out, socialize with the dog, play with it, take it for a walk, whatever the case may be, because, it will dig up your garden and it will scratch up the outside of your walls or whatever, or bite it up because it's bored and it has nothing else to do. I mean, dogs feel, think, love and care, and they do all the things that humans do. In fact, they're probably even more forgiving than a human.
Yeah.
I mean,
there wasn't much science back, several decades ago because people just viewed dogs as, they're just dogs.
They're just a dog. Yeah.
But the more that we started seeing the role of dogs in the military and with law enforcement,
and working dogs with people who suffer from their seizures or their seeing eye dogs or anything else for that matter.
Yeah, we have detection dogs that can detect cancer cells. They can detect seizures. They can detect all sorts of stuff. You have in law enforcement, you have the bomb detection dogs. And prisons, they're actually starting to use them to find cell phones as contraband.
Really?
Yeah, that people are smuggling into the prison system. So there's a huge use for dogs. So there's been more studies about it. And scientists have been making studies on this, and now they're finding out that, some of the science is already 20, 30 years old, but they're noticing that dogs have episodic memories, just like humans. They remember the past, they know what the present is, and they know what to expect for the future. It's no longer that theory where, a lot of the training, even that you see on TV right now, a lot of the training that people use is old-fashioned, just outdated material. The whole alpha thing, that dogs came from wolves and we have to treat them as wolves. There's a scientist, a biologist that was a wolf expert. He actually studied wolves in the wild. His name is David Meach. And he actually studied wolf behavior. And at the time, in the 60s and the 70s, he wrote a book in the 70s, and he determined this is what we saw in wolves. We saw the pack, and there would be one that would fight his way up to the top, and we called him the alpha male. And back in about 12, 13 years ago, he came out and he said, you know what? That information was the best information that we had at the time, but it was wrong because we were studying wolves that were in captivity. So we were mixing wolves from different packs, and that's what created that type of behavior. It wasn't that they're fighting because they just naturally fight in the wild. We made them fight. It's like if you put a bunch of different types of people in a prison system and you lock them up, well, eventually somebody's going to try to fight to the top. It's a hierarchy.
Yeah.
And the wolves in captivity were displaying the same type of behavior. And they started studying the wolves out in the real wild, and they noticed that it's made up, the wolf pack is actually made up of a similar structure as humans, where you have the parental unit, you have the siblings, the littermates. And usually the only time that there would be a fight is between the siblings, because as the siblings grow up, just like humans, there's sibling rivalry.
Okay.
And so a lot of this alpha male, this type of training, they went from wolves, and somehow some people in dog training, they decided to apply that to domestic dogs. And they said, well, they came from wolves, so it should apply. And not only was the alpha thing wrong to begin with, but then they started applying it to domestic dogs. Dogs that we socialized, that we interacted for thousands and thousands of years, and they said, let's treat them like wolves. And now you have people on television, celebrity trainers, that are putting them on their side, forcing them down, practicing the bite with their hand. And that's really...
So you're not a fan of Cesar Millan, right?
Of course not.
Neither am I. I simply cannot stand that individual. As far as his, maybe he's a good dude, I don't know, but as far as his dog training tactics, I am so against what he does.
No, absolutely. And coming from somebody that I love animals, I do rescue work, I do, I love animals everywhere.
Yes.
And I respect people that train animals, because it's one thing to actually open that pathway where you can interact with dogs and other types of animals. And for me, when I see people able to train 2-ton orcas or guinea pigs, mice, I'd rather go with science, because that's what they're using. They're not let's be honest. The dog whisperer. Anytime that you talk about a celebrity, there's going to be people that are supportive, and they're going to say, "Oh, well, you must be jealous." And it's not jealousy. It's just that I want
No.
to make sure that the animals are safe and make sure that people are getting the right information. There's a lot of science behind dog training and animal training in general, and it's sad because of a reality show, you got a lot of people using those techniques at their own home.
I find him to be very cruel. I don't know if that's the right word, but I
Yes.
just find him to be very, very cruel to these dogs that he encounters or that people go to him and ask for help. And I just, I shy every time there's a commercial. I'm just like, oh my gosh,
Right.
just go away. I don't even, I want no part of it. Okay, so I'm speaking with Charlie Moreno. He has an website that is entitled elpasopets.org. And do you have all this information there about a lot of things that we're discussing with the behavior and communication and things like that?
Yeah, I'm always looking for volunteers to help gather articles and content for the website. It's a community website. It's a resource website. But I do have articles on some of the stuff that we're talking about as far as, like body language, socializing your dog. I have a great document that I'm going to add. I'll add it tonight. Sunday night it'll be on. But it discusses socializing your puppy. And there's a behaviorist and a veterinary behaviorist by the name of Ian Dunbar.
Mm-hmm.
And anybody can go online and search for him. But Ian Dunbar was basically the person that revolutionized the dog training world because until the 70s or 80s, people thought that you couldn't train a puppy under 6 months. They were like, there's no way that you can train puppies under 6 months.
Right. And is it in any age a dog can be trained?
Well, I mean, they have shorter attention spans when they're younger because they are getting their senses.
So it might even be better as they're older.
Yeah, I personally have had better experiences training older dogs.
Okay.
I find it depends. I usually work with shelter dogs, rescue dogs, and I feel that it's easier to train older dogs because they have that been there, done that attitude. And if you got a piece of hot dog or cheese or something something really good, they'll learn pretty quickly. With puppies, I love puppies. Who doesn't? But there's a lot more distractions, and they have a higher amount of energy. So that's one thing that's important is that whenever you do, hopefully you hire a professional trainer. But if you're going to pick up on some stuff on your own, make sure that the dog is not just completely all over the place because the training's not going to be as effective.
Now your classes are free of charge, right?
Right. I'm doing the community programs, which are going to be the ones at the Humane Society, the libraries, and rec centers throughout the city.
Okay.
And I'm still trying to book certain ones. We just had one last week and Wednesday, and that was at the Richard Burgess Library. So I'm trying to get some classes done at the rec center, the Don Haskins Recreation Center on the west side on Wrestler.
Okay.
And then we're going to be working on different zip codes. What I'm trying to find out is see where most of these dogs are being intaked from, what zip codes some of these dogs entering the shelter are coming from, so I can try to start getting those educational classes in those areas. And I know 79936 is one of those areas where we're seeing a lot of dogs roaming the streets. So
it seems to be more and more of a problem as I see a lot of either unfortunate, dead animals on the street
mm-hmm.
or just dogs running around, aimlessly. And I'm just thinking, one, why are they not in a secure area to where they're not going out and hopefully they're neutered and or vaccinated.
Right.
And, it just kind of is a vicious cycle with overpopulating of dogs and of course cats.
And cats too. Yeah.
Yeah. And do you deal at all with cats?
I try not to.
You're not a cat guy?
I have I've rescued cats before and I've learned more about cats since then.
Why do you try not to?
Honestly, because behavior as far as body language is a little bit different with cats. And
don't you think that cats are invincible? I mean, that they're gonna. I mean, you and I are mutual friends with an individual who posted the other day saying, "How do I keep my cats from, doing the number 2 in my garden?" And it's like,
well, I think those were his neighbor's cats or just loose cats.
No,
they were his.
Well, they were feral cats, I think he said.
Yeah.
But I mean, I had a neighbor who would put gallons. Everybody says, try the gallons of water. And I'm like, oh my gosh, seriously? My cats would rub on the gallons of water and it would be nice and warm and they'd be cuddling next to it. That is such, I don't know if you call it a Mexican wives' tale or if it's just something, it does not work.
Have you ever seen when they hang them off the trees? Like
No.
actual gallons of water.
I don't understand that. I guess they don't want them to get in the trees to kill a bird. I mean, it's ridiculous. Gallons of water placed around your yard simply looks messy and trashy. It's not going to keep cats out.
No.
Now, I think some folks said that if you spray a certain scent, like citrus, it might keep them away. I know when I put the bottle of Louisiana hot sauce up into my cat's nose when he's trying to get, he like shies away from that. So something spicy maybe, or, of that nature. But I mean, a cat is going to go where a cat wants to go.
And
and I think that's why a lot of people have such distaste for them.
Yeah, I think everywhere throughout the whole U.S. there's problems with feral cats, and one of the biggest problems is with dogs they can reproduce sometimes twice a year or so, but with cats they can reproduce 3 or 4 times a year.
Yeah.
And after the kittens grow up and they're mature, usually after 3 months, now they can reproduce themselves. So it's like gremlins, like throwing water on them. Right. All of a sudden you got little kittens everywhere. But that's one of the biggest problems. It's hard to control. Now, as far as what you do to keep them off your yard, they do sell repellents that you can buy at home improvement stores or feed stores. There's different types of repellents. Now, with feral cats, they'll find a way around it. If you put it on the ground, they're going to jump higher and go. Because
they're survivors. Feral cats are invincible to me, I think. And you'll look at them; they look like they've been run through the ringer. But hey, it's them against the world, and they're going to do whatever they can. So if you think your gallon of water or whatever else is going to keep them out, and please don't just it's all right if you don't dig cats. You know what I mean? Right. They're not for everybody. To me, they're yes, a lot of them can be moody and they're not as loving and whatever. But you know what? I've been blessed to have some wonderful cats in my life, and who love unconditionally, just like dogs do. But just don't be mean to cats and treat your children to be mean to cats, because being mean to an animal or hurting an animal, to me, is a gateway to being mean or hurtful to any living thing.
That's true. I've done different seminars with ASPCA and with the state. I'm also a certified animal control officer, but I don't work for the city. But I've done a lot of seminars, and there is a correlation between animal abuse and domestic violence.
Of course.
And that's why it's important. Like if somebody sees somebody being violent towards an animal, you want to report it, because if you just let it go and you're saying, it's just a dog, even if you're not a pet person, if you're not really necessarily fond of animals, there might be something going on in that home that you don't see. So, and there is a correlation between that too. So you have to kind of, even if you're not a pet person, you still need to report it.
So I have recently begun a relationship with a wonderful human being, and I know, I'm so happy.
Girl.
Well, he happens to own a very large, very beautiful Rottweiler. And I will say, probably for the first time in my life, other than when I was a kid, I was intimidated by this dog. I still am. Is it true or not true? I've heard, and I don't know if there's any truth to it, that Rottweilers are a bit temperamental. You don't know kind of what you'll get each day. Is that kind of true? Or maybe you haven't really heard that.
Their background, they're working dogs. They're herding dogs, really. They're cattle dogs, and they are herding dogs. So I think because of their size, what happens is every few decades we have the breed that takes the hit. They start getting the bad reputation, and right now we still have the pit bulls. They've been around, they've had that reputation since for a while. Let's say the 90s, but it's been a while. But in the 90s, also in the 80s, we had German Shepherds that had a bad reputation. In the 70s, we had Dobermans.
Right.
We've always had Rottweilers in there too. A lot of it,
and he's quite sweet. I mean, I will say that he's just very big, and he doesn't know the power that he has, but you kind of look at his eyes and you're like, I don't know if this dog is really going to dig me or not. It took me a few times to go outside and kind of, get myself, accustomed to him. And then finally it was to the point, because there's like a divider from the patio to the fence where he is in the back, and he runs around in that area. But, that fence was there and I felt comfortable with it. Now, there was a time where he was in the front fenced in area of the yard, but I could be right next to him.
Right.
And that was quite nice. I mean, he just kind of, I just don't know though.
Yeah. I think, I mean, he would let you know. Like I try to tell people, every bite is preventable, and there are things that, they'll let you know before. Usually the best way to introduce yourself to a dog that you're not familiar with is ignore them.
Okay.
You just walk into the yard or let's say somebody's introducing you. I'm not saying just walk into a random yard, but like if somebody is introducing you to the dog.
That dog looks like I want to get to know that dog.
I heard Charlie say just walk in. Yeah.
No, into the yard that you're actually invited to walk into.
If you're invited inside the house and the dog is in the house, or if the dog is in the yard and that person is escorting you in, the best thing to do is just ignore the dog. Don't make eye contact. Just stand there. Let the dog approach you at his own pace or her own pace, and let the dog smell you. No sudden movements. Just be calm. But what a disservice we're doing to our pets is, in the dog world and basic animal.
So you should really. No, I'm sorry. Let me ask you that again. One should never just go up to a dog they don't know and let that dog come to you.
Right.
That's really.
Yeah. Now that I go up to dogs because if I'm doing rescue, the idea is I'm trying to get them out of the street. Trying to help them. But usually I'll never chase a dog. I have a catch pull in my car. I have crazy things in my car, but I have a catch pull in my car. The stuff that animal control officers use. I carry one in my car. I've rarely had to use it. I'd rather not because it's really aversive. It creates tension on their neck and it freaks them out, and they're more likely to bite because of that. So the best thing to do is ignore them. Let them come up to you. Let them smell you at their own pace. And you might have a little bit of barks in here and there, but usually the dog just wants to know that you're not going to hurt him or her. So it's better just to let them, and you'll see the body language change. Like, for example, if you see the tail up, it's harder with certain breeds, especially because
the Rottweiler can't because he's...
And he has his tail docked, right? So it's hard to, that's part of the
communication. Which I don't condone, by the way. I mean, I had my boyfriend said that he bought him like that or he got him like that. And to me, I think that that's plain cruel when you dock a tail of it. And I know that that's the way they're supposed to look with the Dobies and the Rotties and what else? That's pretty much it.
There's some poodles I've seen with docked tails. I'm not sure if I understand.
You know why? Because they're weird, like crazy tails. Anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, but I was saying that that's why you do have to look at the breed and if they have the docked tail. There's a lot of communication that's coming from the tail, that's coming from what we call hackles, the fur that stands up on the end on the shoulders. Right. And that can go all the way to the base of the tail too. So it's not always like you have to look at the shoulders. It can actually be at the base of the tail. There's white in the eyes, which we call whale eye. When you see like half moon, like the white of the eye is exposed, that's usually the reason that happens is because the dog is facing a certain way, but his eyes are redirected another way. And then you start seeing the white in the eyes. That's not necessarily a sign of aggression or anything. That's just, it's kind of like unsure what he wants to do next. So
he's kind of taking in everything, I guess, with his vision or.
And what you have to look at is you have to look at the placement of the tail, the carriage of the tail. You have to look at the placement of the ears, if they're straight forward or if they're back, and the ears do change according to breed. The eyes. Things like that. And once you know, again, a lot of this stuff is covered in some of the classes, you can connect the dots and say, okay, this is how the dog is feeling. Because like one sign with the dog that is unsure and feels a little bit submissive, you might see some dogs that will actually hold a paw up, where they actually bring one paw up. And it's in the dog world, you have to look at the context, obviously. Sometimes if you're walking your dog and you see the dog with the paw up, it doesn't mean that he's being submissive or he's scared. It could just mean that he got a sticker.
Right, yeah.
So you have to look at the context of it. But a lot of dogs, when they're feeling scared or unsure, they'll lift one paw up, and it's a sign of appeasement. They're just kind of saying, like, hey, I'm sorry.
It's cool.
Yeah.
We're good.
We're good. They're trying to redirect. And so that's something that you could look for in a dog that might be scared. Of course, some breeds, you have like short-haired pointers or hunting dogs, and when they see something and they're ready to chase, they're going to lift that paw, and a lot of terriers do that too. So it's hard to go over it with a talk show or a short radio show, but there's a lot of connecting the dots, and that's why it's important to not assume that every dog is friendly, and it's good to assume that not every dog is aggressive.
What about families who introduce another dog into their? I know you kind of touched on aggression towards other dogs, but I mean, I had a he was like a bull mastiff boxer mix, and then I had a Boston Terrier, and the Boston was just, I mean, my Boston just got crazy temperamental towards the end of his life, and was just attacking my beautiful bull mastiff, like crazily.
I love Bostons too.
You do?
I love Boston Terriers.
Oh, Boston Terriers are wonderful, but you know what? You get a few of them together, and they can be the meanest dog. A pack of Bostons could be probably more dangerous than pit bulls sometimes because they can get really downright mean, but they are wonderful dogs to have. I mean, they're very, very true and faithful to their masters and to their family, and very, very territorial. They say that a Boston Terrier is really the toughest little dog out there.
I wouldn't doubt it. I think so. Yeah. I mean, I've run into a few of them that have been pretty out there. So
what do you do? How do you get these dogs to, get along, I guess?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's one thing that we do see a lot in the shelter world, where people they already have a dog.
Right.
They're bringing in a new one, and maybe they just don't have the information, and they kind of just throw them in the room together right away. And it might be too much. Imagine somebody brings home somebody and like, hey, he's going to be living in our house, and you're like, what? Are you kidding? At least, let's go to dinner first and talk about it or something. So a lot of it, I personally believe that you don't have to rush into it. You don't have to bring the dog into that same room right away.
Okay.
What I would recommend is, let's say you're picking up a dog from a shelter, and you're hoping that the dog is going to do well. You can, with some rescues, like the Humane Society, you can bring your dog to the facility and where they can meet in a room.
Oh.
And it's controlled, and you have a handler there, and the adoption counselor is there, so they can help, get them to know each other. What I personally do, because I have 5 dogs myself.
Yeah, I was going to ask
you. And 2 fish in the pond. So I got a whole thing going in my house. What I like to do, because I do take in rescues when I have space, when I have a rescue that says, okay, we can take them in, I'll go and try to help a dog. I don't even introduce them to my dogs for weeks sometimes, because if it's late at night or in the weekend, I want to make sure that the dog doesn't have ringworm, the dog doesn't have any parvo, distemper, things like that.
Right.
So I keep them separate, and I have my garage, and I keep the crate. I put them in there. I give them the food, water, whatever they need. And you have to be real careful, because anytime that you're bringing in a dog into a new environment, they're going to want to escape. And that's one thing that we see a lot of, people adopting a new dog, and then all of a sudden, boom, the dog is out.
They're like, I'm out of here.
Yeah, so they're scared. Yeah. They don't know that that's going to be their new home, so that's why you have to ease them in. Now, what I personally do, if I know I'm going to integrate them with my pack of dogs, I'll take their collar, or I'll take the blanket or the towel that they're sleeping in, and I'll bring it into the other crates or into the other room, and vice versa. I'll switch out the bedding for the other dogs and put it with a strange dog. That way they can smell each other. And then what I'll do also is I'll bring the crate a little closer to the door, and I'll keep the doors closed, but that way they can smell each other through the door. And there might be a little bit of barking here and there, but as long as they're not physically contacting, that's the safest way. And then what I do after that is I have crates for each one, and I'll put each one in a different crate. And crates are great. A lot of people say, "Oh, I don't put my dog in a cage." Crates, dogs are denning animals. They live, they prefer to live in a den, and if you give them, that's what a dog house is. A crate is no different. If you treat it as a den, a place of relaxation, your dog is going to learn to love it, and he's going to go in there and sleep in the crate himself. So if you have crates, I would put each dog in a crate and just watch TV.
All your dogs are in a crate at night?
They go in on their own. Like the 2 original ones that we've had for years, they'll sleep on the bed. They have the option of sleeping on the bed or sleeping in their crates. And usually at night, because I move around in the bed a lot, they'll usually just go to their crate after a couple hours.
They get rolled over.
But sometimes I wake up and they're right on my face, But we also have Sandy, which is my pit bull that we rescued from the desert.
Oh, she's a beauty. She's so beautiful.
Oh, I love her. She's a sweetheart.
So now, that's just your dog now.
Yeah. We rescued her a little
because
background.
you were trying to adopt her out, right?
We were going to adopt her out, and we were waiting because she had demodectic mange, so we were treating that. She had a couple of lacerations and stuff. She was living out in the desert for like 9 months.
Yeah, tell everybody the story about her.
So we moved into this area in the Northeast, new development, and after a few months, actually this was a year ago. A year ago this month, I had seen her in December, but then in March of last year, I was actually able to trap her. We got her in a trap. So I got her in a trap, and I was trying to do it myself. Well, she's super strong, even though she was emaciated and everything. But she got away from me, and she tripped me up, and she just left. She wasn't aggressive or anything, but she just kind of walked away. And I remember her looking back at me, and I'm on the ground, on my butt on the sand, holding my homemade catch pole made out of PVC pipe. And she turns around from like 20 feet away, and she looked at me like, "That's it? That's what you got? That's all you have?" And she just kind of walked away, and I felt embarrassed. And it took about 3 more weeks to actually catch her.
Wow.
But I finally got her, and I would actually sit in the desert and watch her. So I finally got her, put her in the garage, put her in the crate, fed her. I laid in the garage with her for a few hours that first day. I didn't try to go up to her and pet her. I just let her feel me and smell me and everything. And then it took about 2 days for her to actually approach me, and I started hand feeding her. And there's a rescue video on my website, elpasopets.org. You just search for Sandy, and she's there. And you can see the progression on how her body language is amazing, because she would avoid eye contact. Her tail was always tucked between her legs. She would shake. She was so stressed and so tired that the first couple of days she was actually falling asleep standing up. She was just like super exhausted. So it took a few days. By the 4th day, I was teaching her how to play. I was kicking her in her prey drive, swinging the toys around and stuff, and she started chasing. And
you were teaching her how to play. That's an amazing statement right there.
It's sad because
she
didn't know how to jump. She didn't know how to chase. The first couple of days that we had her.
What do you think happened? Why did she end up out in the desert? Do you have an idea?
Anybody in rescue always has a story behind the rescue. And I try to be realistic. You never know. You just never know. But, I'm guilty of it too. I would like to think that maybe she had a good home and she just got away.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, it doesn't always happen like that. But what a lot of us think is that she was probably
dumped.
They probably used her for breeding because she had a lot of litters, and she's only maybe about 3.5 years old. She had a lot of litters. A lot of the skin is never going to go back, and that's what really hurt. The skin really made the mange worse because the yeast and everything stayed inside the creases of the skin, the folds of the skin. So that really made it worse. I think she got used for breeding. It looks like she just had puppies every cycle, every breeding cycle. So she had a lot of litters, and I think once they either got tired of her getting pregnant, maybe it wasn't intentional, they probably dumped her, or maybe they just let her loose. I mean, that's the sad part that people don't see is this happens a lot where people just can't care for their animals, and instead of doing something humane where they're trying to find another home for it or taking it to the city shelter where it has the chance to be adopted, they just take them out to the desert and dump them. So it's
I don't even understand how they don't.
I don't understand.
They don't.
What type of mentality you
have a conscience, a heart. I mean, you're not a human being, and you don't care that there's a little life that's going to suffer because of your inadequacy to care for an animal. Seriously, I mean, don't get an animal. Do a dog a favor. Do not. Trust me. If there's anybody who wants animals adopted out and made sure that they have a home, it's me. But if it's to someone who's going to end up dumping them anyway, or just use them for whatever, or not even care for them, just don't even get one.
Don't get one.
Don't.
I think we live in a country of entitlement where people just feel like, hey,
I need to own
everybody
a dog.
else has a dog, I want a dog. And yeah, after a couple of weeks, the cuteness factor wears out, and then nobody's playing with the dog, and that's how they get out. And I know that realistically, not every dog on the street is a rescue. Not every dog came from a bad environment.
Right.
Some of them just genuinely just got scared and ran off or something. And that's why I try to make an effort whenever I see a dog that I can try to get off the street. I try to find the owners. Hopefully they're microchipped. That's another thing. People in El Paso don't know that it's a law. You have to have your pets microchipped. Dogs, cats, and ferrets. Okay, so if you have a ferret, it has to be microchipped. If your dogs get out of the street, get out of your house, that's a $200 ticket right there. So a lot of times what happens is a person might not be able to afford the microchip, the vaccinations or whatever. The dog gets loose. Now they have a $200 ticket, a $40 ticket, a $40 ticket, and they have no choice but to surrender the dog.
And not only that, also if your dog does get out or you're missing it, oh, my dog is gone. And I'm like, go to animal services.
Right.
Each and every day, if you're going to get the dog out and it's not vaccinated or whatever, you're going to have to pay a fine
Exactly.
to get him out. And if it's not neutered, I don't think they will release it or spayed, right?
We're trying to work on that. Right now there's no policy, but there's a group of us, local animal advocates that are trying to, we're going to compile some information, some data, and we want to make a presentation that there's a lot of other cities that will charge a permit fee if you have an intact, unspayed or neutered dog or cat. And the idea behind that is that there's so many. The city shelter's getting between 100 and 120 every day. They were euthanizing.
Oh.
Last year they euthanized over 25,000 animals. And the city shelter gets animals from all over the county. It's not just the city limits. It's
right.
outside of the city limits, including Fort Bliss too. So there's so many animals that are being put down. And over the last 5 months, it's gone down 20%. They're making changes at the city shelter that I think are wonderful, and that's why I applied to be a volunteer, because now that I see the good changes, I'm gonna give them my support. I'm gonna do what I can to actually help instead of pointing the finger.
It's amazing how many. I had a cat that went missing. I went to look, and they had the cats in various rooms, so you had to make your way
right.
through various rooms. We've got cats here, we've got cats. But I also had to see the amount of dogs that were there.
Yeah.
There had to have been hundreds of dogs there.
Yeah.
Hundreds.
I think they hold 280.
And older dogs, like older retrievers that were somebody's family pet
Mm-hmm.
for a long time. Now, before the show, you spoke to me about the fact that dogs that belong to military families who end up getting, what's the term you used?
PCS. There's different situations, but basically what I've seen, the problem is that we love our soldiers, we love our military
Absolutely.
family, and they do a great service to our city because they bring in a lot of business. However, what happens is sometimes they move into El Paso and they might buy a home or rent a home, and they want, they have good intentions where they want to bring an animal to their family, and they adopt a pet. Well, what happens is sometimes they don't save up money, because if they get sent somewhere else, it's called PCS. If they get PCS, they don't have the money to actually ship the dog, because the Army, the military won't pay for that. They have to pay for their own shipping, and if they're going overseas, they have to pay for their own quarantine, which can be really expensive. So a lot of times these families don't see that, ahead of time, and they have no choice but to leave the animal behind. Now, sometimes they'll take them to animal services, and I've personally, just as an individual, I've gone out there and I've seen some of the kennel cards, and a lot of them are surrendered by the military families. And it'll say reason, it'll say PCS. And but what also happens is that there's programs out there like Dogs on Deployment. It's a nonprofit organization, a national organization, where if you know that you're getting orders to leave, you can contact them and they'll try to find a foster home to actually temporarily care for your pet until you come back.
All right.
And so the military has to become aware of some of these programs. Another thing that I really recommend for the people, not just military, but any family that's considering adopting a pet, but they're really not sure. Maybe they live in an apartment and they might not be, there's a question whether the lease allows it, or they have questions about that. Whenever you adopt a pet, you have that commitment for the life of the pet. It's not just for a year or 2 years. And I think if somebody is interested in adopting a pet, but you're not really sure if you're ready for it, then you can contact different rescue agencies, rescue organizations in El Paso, and I have a list on my website, elpasopets.org. Contact the rescues and ask about a foster program. Ask them, what can I do? I want to get a pet, but I'm not really sure if I'm committed yet. Can I foster an animal? And it depends on the rescue. They all have their different policies. But it's basically renting a pet. Would you buy a car without driving it first? Of course not. So why would you take in a pet that you don't know their energy level, you don't know their temperament, you don't know anything about the breed? So this way you get to see what pet actually fits in your home, what is the right energy level and all of that. So it's renting a pet, it's test driving a pet to see how it does. Now, what happens if usually if you get if you become a foster parent for a pet, they'll ask you. They'll a lot of them will pay for the vet bills. They'll pay for the supplies that you need, the bedding, the crates, and all that stuff. And what happens is every weekend, if they have adoption events, they'll say, okay, well, we need you to bring the dog to this event, or we'll go pick it up. We'll make arrangements. That way they can try to get the dog adopted, because that's really what the goal is. It's beneficial to everybody because the person that wants a pet gets to test it out, and it's great for the pet because it gets them to see a home environment because they're more likely they just came out of a shelter system.
I don't think I could ever be a foster parent because I would fall in love. I mean, I think that there's maybe one dog I've met in my life, okay, maybe two, that I didn't like, and that was a beagle because it was crazy. Because beagles are crazy. They're beautiful, but they're crazy.
I had a lady that surrendered one because she said, he's too loud. Again, a beagle. Yeah, you should have done some research.
Yeah.
They're very loud dogs.
Yeah, they are. I mean, and that's another thing. It's like, they look so cute. Now they're like, oh, it's a Snoopy dog,
Right.
and la 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 la. But man, oh man, those dogs are very hard to train, maintain, and just keep cool, calm, and collected.
You're gonna get some hate mail now. I have a beagle.
No, I hope not. I'm not saying I didn't feel adequate enough to own this animal.
That's a good spin on it.
I wasn't good enough of a human for that dog, is what I'm saying, Charlie. God.
I'm the same way.
No, so if people would like to become foster parents for dogs, then they can go on your website, elpasopets.org,
Right.
and see a list of the rescue organizations and contact them, right?
Yeah, there's a section on the website that's called Directory on the menu, and it's a directory of all, not all of them. I'm constantly adding businesses, but there's dog trainers, there's groomers, and of course there's the rescue organizations. I put the rescue organizations there first, so it's more of a complete list than the other categories, but that's because that's one of the most common questions I get. I have a dog that I can't care for. Can you refer me to a rescue? Now, in a lot of places, that would be something that's pretty common, like, hey, I have a dog, I can't care for it, I'm going to take it to a rescue organization. Here in El Paso, we have so many unwanted pets. A lot of the rescues just can't take them in.
They can't.
They're full. They're all full. A lot of the rescues are also foster-based. They don't actually have shelters. So because of that, there's less places for them to put these dogs. So a lot of the times, if you have a pet that you cannot take care of, you can contact the rescues, but a lot of them have a waiting list, and a lot of them will ask for a donation because it does cost money to actually bring in these pets. And sometimes they just can't take them. They just can't take every single pet.
And if you're evicted or you need to move out of your house, don't leave your dog in the backyard. I got a text the other day from a friend of a picture of a little Chihuahua, and he's like, you want the neighbors skipped out, and my mother's feeding the dog. And I'm like, I said some really bad things about the people that left the dog, and then I said, God bless your mom. But I can't.
What are you gonna do?
I can't take him, I can't. And everybody comes to me because I love animals so much, and I'm sure they do the same to you. And, you have your hands full, I'm sure. Yeah. We didn't finish about Sandy, but you can read or watch the video.
That's a teaser. They can go to the website.
All right,
and
very
watch the
cool.
videos.
Also, real quickly, since we were speaking about, you have a little part on grooming, pet responsibility, on keeping your animals groomed, and but is there really enough enforcement? I mean, I know that there's some dogs out there, like the poodle type dogs, that need the regular maintenance. That's another thing. If you cannot maintain your dog that does need the regular baths and the regular grooming as far as getting their hair, shaved or cut. First of all, oh my gosh, can you imagine being a dog like that in El Paso and not having that woolly hair taken off?
Well, the thing is, with certain breeds, like here in El Paso, we're seeing a lot of huskies, a lot of northern breeds.
Why?
I don't know why.
That's ridiculous.
We're seeing
Stop getting huskies.
Yeah, it's the weather's not fit for huskies and
or Saint Bernards even.
It's really not.
And
good.
Especially if you're not going to let the dog come in an air conditioned house, they're outside like, oh my God, kill me now.
If you have refrigerated
or a sheep
air,
dog,
bring them in.
Yeah.
But don't. That's what we're seeing in my neighborhood. There's at least 3 or 4 huskies. One Malamute and 3 huskies, and they're usually in the backyard. And this is a new development, so a lot of the houses don't
There's
have
no
landscaping.
grass.
Yeah, it's just dirt and rocks, and it's sad. But a lot of times, okay,
buy a kiddie pool for them at least.
yeah, get the kiddie pool and get you instead of a regular water bowl, because huskies have a high prey drive. If they get bored, they're going to toss that water bowl around.
Yeah.
Get a pail and hook it up to your chain link or the gate. That way they don't tip it over.
Okay.
That way they always have the water there. Get them a Kong. You can go to a pet store and look for a Kong. It's a big rubber toy that you can put treats inside and stuffing, like not stuffing like cornbread stuffing, but like actual peanut butter stuffing or something like that. And it keeps them busy. It mentally stimulates them, and it wears out their energy a little bit. But there's a lot of people that have these longer haired breeds, and they take them to the groomers and they say, "Can you shave them because it's getting hot?"
Well, that's not good either.
They're
going to get sunburned.
They're going to get sunburned if they're outside. Plus, people don't realize that in the winter it keeps them warm. The coat keeps them warm. In the summer, it also keeps them cool. So it's insulation. So if you shave that, especially if you shave it too much, they're actually going to get hotter because it's more direct contact with the sun, with the heat. So dogs don't sweat. Humans, if we get hot, we start sweating. Dogs only sweat from their nose and their paws.
Right.
So
what about I thought that's why they pant.
Well, that's how they're trying to get some of that, the cool air in and all that stuff, but they're not able to sweat. So it's one of those things. Dogs that are sweating from their paws, that's a pretty serious sign of anxiety, or there could be a medical condition.
Wow.
So if you come home and your dog was in a crate or something, and you see wet paw prints in the crate because you think he's going crazy, it can be a real sign of separation anxiety.
And I'm sorry I've been negative about all the bad things that people do. There's some wonderful pet owners in our city, and I'm so thankful to know a lot of them. And, if you love and you care for your animals and keep them a part of your family, kudos and way to go, keep going. And I know that you might be feeding your dog, a piece of bacon right now as you listen to this, while you're having breakfast. Hi, Charlie.
I think there are a lot of great responsible pet owners, but we need more.
Right.
And there's a lot of stuff that people can do. Even if you can't adopt, you can foster. If you can't foster, you can help spread some of the word of some of the animals that are up for adoption. You can volunteer at rescue organizations
and donate if you can.
There's a lot of stuff to do out there, and I work with a lot of the rescues here in El Paso. You can go to the website and look up some of them, see which ones that you're interested in. And, some of them are 501c3, so they can get tax-deductible donations, but make sure that you ask about that first.
Okay.
But there's a lot of stuff that people can do to help, because El Paso needs the help.
Absolutely. ElPasoPets.org. When is your next class?
Okay, we have a class at the Humane Society on April 19th. April 19th is going to be a pet ownership class, 101 class, so we go over basic manners. We're going to be going over common problems and things like that, and some body language and behavior stuff. That one's going to be at the Humane Society on the 19th, that Saturday at 2 p.m.
Okay, very good. And those classes are free?
Those classes are going to be free.
Do you have to, though, kind of RSVP ahead of time, do you know?
Yeah, you can contact the Humane Society, and they'll write you in the sign-in sheet. There's other classes that I'm going to be doing outside of the Humane Society at different rec centers and libraries. They can go on my website, elpasopets.org, to see when they're coming up, or they can contact me. My phone number is on the website as well. All
right. We could have gone another hour talking about all this stuff, but I think that we got a lot of good stuff out there, and you're welcome to come back anytime, Charlie. Thank you so much. Very, very much for being here. ElPasoPets.org is the website. Please go there if you have any questions, or, if you want to find out more of what we've been speaking about. And of course, please adopt your pets. Do not go out and shop for them or buy them off the side of the road. Please, there's so many beautiful dogs that are being waited to look for a forever home, and that's the best way to go. There's so many great rescue organizations that have these beautiful dogs for you.
Yeah, and make sure that their microchip is up to date, because a lot of times people will adopt a pet and they're already microchipped, but they don't go on the website to put their own contact
re-register them.
Yeah, so make sure that their microchip is up to date. Anytime that you take your pets to the vet, ask them to scan for the microchip so you know where it is, because a lot of times the microchip can actually float to their leg.
I would think that it would.
It's a little size of a grain of rice.
Yeah.
So it moves. It can travel to their back leg or their back hind quarters. So have the vet scan for the microchip, And if you notice that it's going further from where it's supposed to be, make sure that you put a tag on their collar that says that they are microchipped.
Okay. All right. Look at that. All that useful information. Thank you, Charlie. I appreciate you once again.
Thank you so much.
All right. ElPasoPets.org. Check it out online. And thanks to Charlie Moreno for being here today. Be good to your dogs for sure. And your kitties too, even though. All right. Thanks again for joining me. And tune in again next Sunday for another edition right here on 92.3 The Fox and Fox Oldies 1150 AM. Till then, have yourself a great
Yesterday's hits, today's classics.
He grew up with it.
That's the stuff I grew up on. What we grew up with. 92.3 The Fox.